They said he should never have been born, that his very existence was a mistake. And on the loneliest nights, Yasuo himself believed it. His story begins in a small Ionian village, hidden among rolling hills and whispering bamboo. A boy, nameless to destiny, but burdened from birth. Yasuo's father was like the autumn wind, restless, fleeting, never staying long enough to settle. He swept into his mother's life with charm and fire, but left before winter could harden into permanence. All Yasuo had was his mother, already raising a son, and that son was everything Yasuo was not: Yone. Dutiful, disciplined, respectful, the child every villager admired. The child Yasuo was always compared to. On his best days, Yasuo was an error in judgment. On his worst days, a mistake that could never be undone. And yet, even in their contrast, the brothers were inseparable. When the children mocked Yasuo for being reckless, for being fatherless, it was Yone who shielded him. When Yasuo's temper flared, Yone's hand rested on his shoulder, steadying him. They were opposite halves of the same storm. Yone, the calm; Yasuo, the chaos. The years passed, and Yone began his apprenticeship at the village's famed sword school, where generations had honed their steel and their spirit. Yasuo, burning with stubborn determination, followed. He waited outside in the monsoon rains, night after night, his small figure drenched, his eyes unyielding. The masters tried to ignore him. The other students laughed, but Yasuo would not move. The storm outside mirrored the storm within. And finally, the gates opened. Inside, Yasuo's natural gift became undeniable. His blade moved with the wind itself, swift, untamed, beautiful in its chaos. But his arrogance grew just as quickly. He was impulsive, wild, the antithesis of Ionian discipline. It was then that Elder Soma, last master of the legendary wind technique, noticed him. Soma was old, but the air seemed to bend to his will. He saw in Yasuo something dangerous and something extraordinary. But Yasuo, proud and reckless, refused Soma's offer of tutelage. He wanted the wind, but on his own terms, a storm without direction. Yone, ever the steady brother, begged him to humble himself. Beneath the maple trees, he placed a single seed into Yasuo's palm, the highest lesson of the school, a reminder that even the smallest seed, carried by the wind, could grow into greatness only if it learned patience. The next morning, Yasuo bowed before Soma, accepting both the role of student and protector. For the first time, the wind had found its blade. Peace, however, is fragile. The Noxian invasion swept across Ionia like wildfire. Tales of the great stand at the Placidium of Navori ignited the hearts of warriors. Young men, old farmers, even students, all left their homes to join the fight. Yone marched, the classmates marched, and Yasuo's heart screamed to march with them. But Elder Soma's command was final. Yasuo was to stay behind, to guard the elders and protect the school. The storm inside Yasuo raged. To him it was cowardice, to him it was betrayal of his land, but still he obeyed, until the night the drums came. The rain was relentless that night, each drop striking like a war drum. From the valley came the unmistakable sound of a Noxian march. Yasuo's pulse thundered. This was his chance, his moment to carve glory from the chaos. He left his post, sword in hand, wind at his back, he ran into the storm. But there was no battle, no clash of armies, only silence and death. Hundreds of corpses, both Noxian and Ionian, lay in heaps. The ground was torn as if something unnatural had ripped through it. The very air was poisoned with despair. No single blade could have stopped this. No storm could have changed its course. Yasuo fell to his knees, sobered by the truth. He had abandoned his post for nothing. When Yasuo returned, dripping with rain and dread, the school was already lost. Elder Soma was dead. His lifeless body lay cold, and the whispers began to spread like wildfire. You abandoned him. You killed him. The students circled him, blades drawn, eyes filled with fury. Yasuo tried to explain, but words could not undo the truth of his absence. He fought because he had no choice. The wind answered his call, scattering steel and breaking the circle. And when he fled, blood on his hands, he knew his escape sealed his guilt. Now he was a fugitive, hunted by his people, branded a murderer. But none of the blades he feared more than the one wielded by his brother. They met beneath the moonlight, bound by blood and honor. Yone's blades gleamed with purpose, his eyes heavy with sorrow. Yasuo's wind coiled around him like a storm waiting to break. No words could change what had to be done. They circled each other, the silence broken only by the rustle of leaves. And then steel clashed against steel. The duel was relentless, wind against precision, chaos against order. And in the end, Yasuo's storm was too strong. With a single flash, his blade struck true. Yone staggered, his life spilling into the earth. Yasuo dropped his sword, begging forgiveness. But Yone's final words were a dagger to his soul. The wind techniques that killed Elder Soma, only you knew them. And then Yone was gone. The seed fell from Yasuo's hand, carried away by the merciless wind. Now a brother killer, now masterless, now truly alone. Yasuo wandered the mountains, drinking away his guilt. A sword without a sheath, a storm without a sky. Villagers whispered of him as if he were already a ghost. And perhaps, in his heart, he was. But fate had not finished with Yasuo. In the snow, he met Talia, a young Shuriman girl, a stone mage fleeing the Noxians who sought to enslave her. She was frightened, untrained, but filled with raw power. In her, Yasuo saw something fragile yet unbroken. And for the first time since Yone's death, he became more than a wanderer. He became a teacher. He showed her how wind could shape stone, how patience could control chaos. In her laughter, he remembered what it meant to protect instead of destroy. But the world shifted again. Rumors spread of a god-emperor rising in Shurima. Talia had to return to her people, and Yasuo, carrying the weight of failure, gave her the maple seed, the symbol of humility he no longer deserved. They parted, teacher and student, wind and stone. At last the truth reached Yasuo. Elder Soma had not been betrayed. His death was an accident, born of the Noxian exile, Riven. She carried guilt, just as Yasuo carried it. But knowing the truth did not cleanse him. For what mattered was not Soma's death, but the choices Yasuo made that led to his brothers. He sought solace at the Spirit Blossom Festival, where lanterns lit the night and blossoms floated like whispers from the spirit realm. But no festival could heal him. His grief was too heavy, his regret too deep. And regret has power. From his sorrow rose a demon, an Azakana, a spirit that fed on his guilt. It came to devour him, clawing from the shadows. But before it struck, another blade cut it down. A masked man stood before Yasuo, twin blades glinting. The stance, the presence, Yasuo's heart froze. It was Yone, returned from death. But vengeance did not come. Yone's eyes, hidden beneath the mask, carried only bitter resignation. He struck down the demon, then turned to Yasuo, not to kill, not to forgive, but to let him go, with nothing more than a cold blessing. And so, Yasuo continues to wander, drifting like the wind across Runeterra, untethered, unshackled, yet never free. For every step he takes, every gust of wind that answers his blade, carries the same burden, the same question. The wind is free, but I am not.